November 23, 1979, a 19-year-old woman walks into a Florida nightclub. Her truck is found in the parking lot. She never comes home. 1 year later, her body is found in the woods just 4 miles away. Who failed her? The police? Her friend? Or someone hiding in plain sight? This is the true story of Melody Rhoades Husk, a bold, fearless young woman whose murder remains unsolved. You're watching Real Crime Pulse. Hit like, subscribe, and share to help keep Melody's case and her. Memory-alive. Melody Rhoades Husk was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her early years were spent in Spartanburg and Coppens, South Carolina, where she grew up alongside her siblings, including her sister Roxanne. When Melody was 10 years old, her family relocated to Neptune Beach, Florida, a quiet residential community just across the Intracoastal Waterway from Jacksonville. It was in this coastal town that Melody's story would continue to unfold. Roxanne remembers Melody as a spirited, imaginative child. Together, they spent countless hours creating homemade Barbie houses, long before they could afford the real dream house. Melody's creativity and fierce loyalty left a lasting impression on Roxanne. One vivid memory stood out. A school bully once targeted Roxanne, who had difficulty walking. Melody intervened without hesitation, confronting the boy and demanding he apologize. She told him plainly that if he ever mocked her sister again, it would get physical. As Melody matured, that same fiery personality remained. Her brother Craig described her as bold and unafraid, someone who didn't back down. He often joked that Melody should have been a boy. As an adult, she carried a knife and pistol for protection, a sign of her assertive, self-reliant nature. Melody was also compassionate. She volunteered with the Special Olympics and loved her 2 cats, Seagram and Seven. She embraced fashion, music, and dancing, frequently spending weekends out with close friends. Short in stature, with hazel eyes and brown hair, Melody was widely considered beautiful, inside and out. Her life was full of energy and kindness. This section reveals Melody not just as a victim of tragedy, but as a vibrant, protective, and loving young woman, a presence deeply missed by those who knew her best. In the period leading up to her disappearance, Melody Rhoades Husk was navigating personal challenges that disrupted the stability of her life. At the time, she was married, but her relationship began to unravel when she discovered that her husband had been involved in selling drugs. The revelation not only shook her trust, but also compromised the safety and values she held close. Adding to the emotional strain was a rumor that her husband was having an affair with one of her friends. Whether the allegation was true or not, it was enough to infuriate Melody and deepen the fracture in their relationship. Confronted with betrayal on multiple fronts, she made the decision to leave the marriage behind. Melody moved back into her parents' home in Neptune Beach, a familiar and safer environment where she could regroup. There, she started working at Quincy's Steakhouse, a change that marked her effort to regain independence and establish a new routine. Friends and family recall that despite the turmoil, Melody continued to be social. She enjoyed going out dancing and spending time with a close-knit circle of friends. These events reveal a young woman facing serious personal conflicts while trying to rebuild her life. Her return home and new job suggest a desire for self-preservation and a fresh start. This period of transition places Melody in a vulnerable yet determined state, one that would soon be cut short under tragic and unexplained circumstances. On the evening of November 23, 1979, Melody Rhoades Husk, just 19 years old, went out with a female friend to Hobo's Discotheque in Neptune Beach. The club stood alone, surrounded by a wooded area, a lively destination tucked into an otherwise quiet part of town. Melody, known for her fashion sense, wore stylish jeans and a sweater. It was a typical weekend night for her music, friends, and dancing Dot at some point during the evening. Her friends stepped away from their table to dance. When she returned, Melody was gone. There was no sign of struggle. No one remembered seeing her leave, and her pickup truck remained parked outside near the wooded edge of the property. The friend did not alert anyone. Instead, she left the club and went to another party across town. She made no attempt to search for Melody. This detail raised immediate concern, particularly for Melody's family. Her sister, Roxanne, became alarmed the next morning when Melody hadn't come home. She contacted the friend for answers, but none were provided. With growing unease, the family reported Melody missing by the late afternoon of November 24th, despite the unusual circumstances. And Melody's sudden disappearance, the response from law enforcement was underwhelming. Early questions about the friend's actions remained unanswered. Though suspicion surrounded her, police said there was not enough evidence to pursue further action. No one was taken in for questioning, and the vehicle, an important piece of potential evidence, was left undusted for fingerprints. These final known moments of Melody's life are unsettling. They mark the beginning of a mystery that would endure for decades. The combination of a vanished young woman, an unhelpful companion, and a lack of investigative urgency created a fragile foundation from which the case would struggle to recover. Melody was gone, and critical time was already slipping away. In the wake of Melody's disappearance, her family was thrust into a nightmare made worse by what they describe as police indifference. According to Roxanne, when the family attempted to file a missing person report with the Neptune Beach Police Department, officers were hesitant and dismissive. From the beginning, it seemed that Melody's case was not taken seriously. When Melody's truck was found in the parking lot at Hobo's Discotheque, police did not dust it for fingerprints. No immediate canvassing was done. No urgent search was organized, and critical time passed without meaningful action. Frustrated by the lack of progress, Melody's father took the investigation into his own hands. He began visiting bars across Jacksonville, looking for a person of interest that police had mentioned but never fully pursued. As days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the absence of answers tore at the family. The emotional strain deepened as each effort to find Melody led to a dead end. The lack of urgency and follow-through from investigators left the family feeling abandoned. The pressure and stress eventually affected the foundation of the family itself. Roxanne remembers the toll it took on her parents' marriage. The prolonged uncertainty, the pain of not knowing, and the inability to protect their daughter proved overwhelming. Roxanne said plainly, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Her parents divorced not long after. This chapter in Melody's story shows how the loss extended far beyond her disappearance. The family's grief, amplified by law enforcement's early failures, led to irreversible damage. It marked the end of their hope for normalcy and the beginning of a long, painful wait for answers that never came. December 14th, 1980, more than a year after Melody Rhoades Husk disappeared, her remains were discovered off San Pablo Road in Jacksonville. The location was just 4 miles from where she was last seen at Hobo's Discotheque in Neptune Beach. After months of uncertainty and unanswered questions, the worst fears of Melody's family were confirmed. Authorities told them she had been murdered. For her loved ones, the news was paralyzing. Roxanne, only 16 years old at the time, remembers the chaos that followed. Their family home quickly filled with police officers, neighbors, and relatives. A storm of activity surrounded them, but inside there was only shock. Melody's mother collapsed upon hearing the news, her body giving out under the weight of grief. For a year, the family had tried to maintain hope. Now that hope was gone, replaced by an irreversible reality. Funeral arrangements began almost immediately. Roxanne recalls the overwhelming number of people who came to pay their respects. The outpouring of support underscored the impact Melody had on those around her. But no amount of condolences could ease the pain. Planning a funeral for someone so young, someone they had prayed would return home, was an unbearable task. The discovery also shook the local community. Crime in the beaches area was considered minimal, particularly violent crime. Melody's murder stood out an anomaly that brought fear and disbelief to an otherwise quiet region. The wooded location, so close to a busy area, made the case even more unsettling. This moment marked the culmination of the family's search, but offered no closure. Instead, it deepened the tragedy. They had an answer, but it came far too late. The grief they had carried for over a year transformed into mourning, and the questions that remained would only grow more painful with time. Despite the discovery of Melody Rhoades Husk's remains, her murder remains unsolved. No arrests were made. No one was charged. More than 4 decades later, the investigation has yielded few answers. The case that once stirred concern in the quiet neighborhoods around Neptune Beach and Jacksonville has largely faded from public view. Suspicion continues to surround the friend who accompanied Melody to Hobo's Discotheque the night she disappeared. Her decision to leave the club without searching for Melody and then attend another party raised questions from the beginning. But suspicion alone is not enough. Law enforcement at the time stated there wasn't sufficient evidence to prove any involvement. That remains true today. For Melody's family, the silence is as loud as ever. Roxanne and her loved ones have spent years grappling with a loss they cannot fully explain. Time has forced them to move forward, but it has not erased the pain. They've learned to accept the permanence of their loss, even as the questions linger. The tragedy of Melody's story lies not just in her death, but in the lack of resolution. With no clear suspects and no new developments, her case remains one of countless cold cases across the country. These are stories that begin with trauma and end with silence, leaving families suspended in grief. This section reinforces the long-term impact of early missteps in the investigation. The failure to collect evidence, the lack of urgency, and the missed opportunities shaped the trajectory of the case. In the absence of justice, what remains is a void, one filled with memories, pain, and the hope that someday someone will come forward. More than 45 years have passed since Melody Rhoades Husk disappeared, but for her family, the loss still lives in the quiet corners of daily life. Her sister Roxanne feels it most during simple, ordinary routines, especially while washing dishes. It was something they used to do together, a shared task now transformed into a moment of reflection. The absence in those moments is sharp. A reminder of what was taken. In her home, Roxanne keeps a photo of Melody displayed. It's more than a keepsake, it's a way of keeping her sister present. Though the years have gone by, the connection remains. Melody's memory is not frozen in the tragedy, but in the joy, laughter, and love they shared as sisters. The family has learned to live with the pain. They've accepted that some questions may never be answered, but acceptance is not the same as closure. Without justice, there is always something missing, a space that time cannot fill. By continuing to speak about Melody, the family hopes to keep her story alive. They want the world to remember her not just as a cold case, but as a person who mattered, a person who was loved. And they hold on to the belief that someone, somewhere, may still know something. Anyone with information about Melody Rhoades Husk's unsolved homicide is urged to contact the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office or First Coast Crime Stoppers. A single tip could bring long-awaited answers and long-overdue justice. 45 years have passed, but Melody's voice still echoes through the silence. Her family deserves answers. Her story deserves justice. If you know anything, contact the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office or First Coast Crime Stoppers. One tip could finally bring peace. Thank you for watching Real Crime Pulse. Please like, share, and subscribe, not just for content, but to help keep cold cases like Melody's from being forgotten.